Hi, this is David Gornoski, host of A Neighbor's Choice and Things Hidden podcast, as well as some of our other programs like Science and You with our chief science advisor, Dr. Yu, and our seed oil survival series that we continue to have great fun unpacking the truth of nutrition. I wanted to give you a quick little message saying we appreciate all the support that we get from our uh, monthly contributors and our one-time donation supporters. And we'd encourage all of you to go to our website, a neighborschoice.com, click on contribute, and make a monthly pledge today, whether it's $1, $5, 15, 20, 50, whatever you want to do. Doesn't matter. Just be a part of building this new media project that we've developed to empower and inform, to inspire, to kickstart a scientific renaissance, an anthropological breakthrough and reformation in the church. All these things are possible with your support right now. So make that commitment today and help us keep doing the productions that we have. Thank you. Well, we're back for another program today on this new year, 2024. A Neighbor's Choice is back. I'm your host, David Gornoski, here with my friend and writer at a neighborschoice.com, Surit Dasgupta. How you doing, Surit?
I'm doing fine. How are you doing?
Great. How's your new year so far? Are you excited about what's going to happen?
Oh, yes. Very excited, very curious. Let's see
My,
what happens.
my God, everything's going to be explosive this year. Hopefully, not literally, although in many parts of the world, it is unfortunately quite explosive as wars are continually going on. And we pray for the victims of these disgusting wars, these war pigs that want to continue to make money off of tearing flesh apart. My God, what are we going to do? 2024 AD, after the inauguration of the personhood revolution of Jesus Christ, people are still finding a way to make a killing off of killing children. Can you believe it? It's disgusting, isn't it?
Well, the good thing is we know for what it is, right? Like in decades prior, we were always kept in the dark, but this time the light is shining on all the evil things that governments have to do to maintain themselves.
Yeah. Well, amazingly, the worst parts of wickedness from governments that are doing murderous wars and bank fraud and all the things they do are unfortunately propped up because of stupid theology, what we would call theologically retarded ideas about Christ that are not actually true. They're not actually in the spirit of Christ. And yet, that it's almost like there's so much energy to slander and deform the message of Christ because if you just understand it for what it really is, the radical freedom that it brings, so much of our stupid support for politicians, for dumb laws, for putting our trust and faith in governments, both domestic and foreign, to be somewhat sent on a mission from God. Everybody around the world typically has a theology of some degree or another that assumes the government that they're a part of or that they like is somehow God sent. And that is a dumb, idiotic, pagan, barbaric, brutish, and stupid approach to things. And yet, so much of our theology has been distorted by dumb ideas that keeps mud on the picture of Christ so that you can't see how simple it is that the kings are raging because they have no place in the kingdom of heaven with their behavior, with their violence.
Oh, yes, I absolutely agree with you. And it's amazing how governments have kept this thing going even today. But the thing is, like, what will finally bring them down is the question, because people have been talking about the implosion of the dollar. It's ever since the start of the Ukraine war. They've been talking about the implosion of the FBI and all of that, after it was pretty much revealed that they attacked a sitting president. And that's what keeps me wondering is what's the end game going to look like? Because we already see how the house of cards is falling apart, but what would be the final blow
Yeah.
to these institutions? Like
And then,
for example, we've seen the pandemic roll out and everything. We have now pretty much we can see that how they've lied to us in every regard, but like what is going to happen, like there's certainly much outrage out there, but what are people going to do about it? Will they
yeah,
violently overthrow the
yeah.
government, or is there going to be a peaceful transition to something better?
Well, Whitney Webb, who's a journalist that's been getting a lot of attention, she keeps talking about how she follows all these weird dark money flows, and she follows these weird companies, and she's got a good handle on some of the different things going on. It seems to be, but she's been saying they keep pushing this, running through these narratives that there's going to be a digital 9/11 type event in 2024 because of the presidential election for America, which is the biggest empire in the world. But also, there's a lot of elections around the world in 2024 scheduled, and they're going to do a digital 9/11 event. So it may be one of those things where it's like, they make you look like you're ready for your next pandemic. They hit you with a 9/11 that's digital, and then they always hit you with something you're not expecting. So, okay, you're bracing for the next pandemic, and they actually push that sequel back in their Marvel universe of atrocities. They'll push that back to 2030 for that sequel, but they'll bring in a left hook for some kind of digital 9/11 or something like that will force people to have to use a central bank digital currency, CBDC, or they'll they'll do something that you have to have, like we have the dumb Nikki Haley, one of the dumbest people God could have ever allowed in the human culture today, advocating with glee for a digital ID. We need to have a digital ID for you to be able to log on to the internet. I mean, these fools, these liars, and they just waste all of our time planting stupid, idiotic ideas for oligarch benefits. But uh, people are lulled into a large portion of the population is still lulled into talking points like freedom, and Nikki Haley can say we got to fight for our freedom, and that's why we need an online digital currency so that my oligarchs can track you, you little peasants. And I wish she could just say that honestly. She'd probably get more support that way, being honest about what her role is in all this. People like her are just a dime a dozen. Those almost a waste of breath to talk about them by name. But there is this kind of normalization in certain circles to clamp down on speech, to make speech a form of violence. Disinformation is now a type of violence. It's they've been pushing that, trying to normalize that. You're not allowed to criticize the nation of Israel in certain, Florida, the other places want to make this like you can't say anything about their policies, or else you're considered to be, a criminal. And the same thing goes for other types of speech, that are considered controversial. You're allowed to speak ill of certain things, or else they want to make that a crime. When you attach that to a digital ID, if they're able to push that, or a central bank digital currency, that's a scary place to be, and a lot of people keep saying, man, David, you need to get on the Bitcoin thing. And I don't understand. I'm skeptical of it because I think all those usual suspects of the banksters, the criminal banksters that run the Federal Reserve and other central banks around the world, they've already been doing what they can to co-opt the Bitcoin system to make sure they control the on ramps, the off ramps, and everything else. And they'll be able to seize your little bitcoins at a moment's notice. Whether they get you on a Bitcoin or get you on a central banking digital currency, I don't like the idea of having digital stuff, AI, all this stuff becoming the framework of our daily activities. If they get, for example, I know I'm going with this, but a little long on this point, but if they get, what I could see them doing is some kind of a online false flag or something like that, blame it on China, Russia, whoever, blame it on some rogue Gazan, who's sitting under the rubble, who just flicked a switch and all of a sudden made everybody's computer shut down and everybody can't get their heat on for winter. And then they say, please, we've got to adapt to this digital online account for us to know that you're not an extremist, so we can get your heat on for the winter so you don't freeze to death. I could see that being an issue. That's not going to be a problem here in Florida, but it will be in many states where there's a freezing cold temperatures. Or you could do a thing where you have the Russians hack the meat supply, like allegedly happened before, and all of a sudden people can't get access to meat or something like that. And then the big grocery stores like Walmart and these chains say, okay, well, in order to shop at our stores, you're going to have this central banking digital currency account installed with your bank account. If you don't have a CBDC authorized bank account attached to your debit card or whatever, then you're not allowed to shop at our store. Or, there's a whole host of little scammy scenarios they could run here. What do you think about those?
Well, the Bitcoin thing is very curious. It's a very interesting case. I think the intention was pretty good in creating such a thing. Is to create the intention was to create a parallel currency, an alternative currency that is not reliant upon the central banks and all of these institutions, but at the same time it's still within the framework of the digital whole thing. It's not something physical. You can't hold it in your hand. So I'm often wondering if gold and metals are outdated, or whether they're still part of a realistic alternative that we can still have access to, uh, especially considering how the economy is everything is falling apart, and it's been falling apart for a long time now. It's been a steady, slow, sure falling apart, I guess. Like, I don't know what the future holds.
Yeah, what do you think about what do you think is going to be the touch point? Is it going to be a connection to, I'm trying to think of a
Well,
vicious,
whatever the
realistic pressure point to get the most ardent skeptics of a central banking digital currency to have to use it. And it would probably be related to access to food or heating or something like that.
Well, over here we have this thing called Adar, which has basically you can't do anything without it, right? It's like a digital ID that the elites in the West are talking about, which is it'll have all of your biometric and all of that stored into some digital database, and it's at the mercy of every corporations. Any corporations willing to pay big bucks can have access to it. And on top of that, you can't really do anything without it, right? You
Right.
can't get your children into schools without it. You can't open a bank account without it. So these all of these basic fundamental things that people are supposed to have access to, they have been blocked away because of this one thing, this digital ID. And it's the same as with the pandemic, right? You have to take a certain medicine. If you don't take this medicine, you won't have access to it. So I guess the solution to all of this is something that Bitcoin was approaching towards, is decentralization, complete decentralization, like where everybody can have it, whatever assets they have, they can have it secure at their fingertips. So they don't have to go to any third party to have access to their assets. So decentralization is the key here. And also, like, we have to look forward, like, a lot of people have been reacting to the establishment narratives.
Yeah.
They're always reacting. They're always doing mimetically the opposite of what the
Yes.
establishment does. So they'll have to look forward to building something. It look forward to creating something. The
Yes.
question is, what do we create?
Yes.
Well, to a certain extent, it has to be something that the establishment can never achieve, and that is spontaneity and freedom. All of these things, like you mentioned, Nikki Haley, often mentions freedom, but at the same time, she's taking away your liberties, right?
Yeah.
So we'll have to build something that preserves freedom, and if we are going to do that, we'll have to imitate God. We'll have to imitate the Christian God, as exemplified in Jesus, who
Right.
never put compulsion on anybody, but uh, always self-sacrificed towards
Right.
the betterment of others, in service to humanity, whether it's through miracles or whether it's through the crucifixion, the death on as through crucifixion. So we'll have to look towards Christ. The future is concentrated. The future is highly focused on Christ, and whoever imitates Christ has the future in the palm of his hands.
Yeah. Well, that leads me to what I posted, that 2024 will be the year that gravity is tamed. That's where I started that post off on the first of this year. And we also released our special Wright Brothers flight anniversary Science and You episode with our chief science advisor at A Neighbor's Choice, Dr. Yu, demonstrating the mechanics of anti-gravity and how it works. And then we also did some recent talks with folks like Father Turbo Qualls, who is an Orthodox priest and has some great insights into kind of the theological perspective on current events. And in that discussion, we had a lively little friendly dialogue about what is the different perspectives available about things like, what about anti-gravity? Could Christians, uh, people who are motivated by the personhood revolution of Christ, serve their fellow human beings by having the boldness of mind to try to tame gravity through technological engineering? And you know, we kind of went around that topic on different angles, but it seemed to be at the end he basically conceded that it was a good idea. But the problem is, most likely, if one were to succeed in that, they would be co-opted or attacked by the government. So therefore, if one is to succeed in that, that would be a sign, most likely, that they've been you know, they've been allowed uh, into fruition by the establishment. That such an effort, for example, radical breakthroughs in transportation technology like anti-gravity technology used to fly without using liquid fuel and these different traditional forms of flight and transportation, that such radical challenges to the mafias of the world would only be allowed if one were to make a deal to some degree with those same evil forces. It's a very uh, compelling and persuasive thought, but it's one that we have to not be afraid of staring it down. For example, and it's not the same world, but when the Wright brothers were experimenting with a flying device and others like them were doing that, I'm sure there was probably a mafia force somewhere out there that wouldn't like that either. Um, Maybe it wasn't as well fine tuned at a global scale like we have today with the different oligarchs, uh, globalist finance, globalist governance. But it nevertheless, there's real forces out there that probably didn't want to see humans have flight. Now, the flight industry has still been heavily regulated. Even personal private, you know, flying is heavily regulated by the government and licenses and all the different things that go along with that. So it's certainly not a free market, that flight system. and the airlines are heavily, basically government extensions. So we know that anything that would come about to disrupt the petroleum industry with gas cars, or disrupt the rocket industry with anti-gravity devices going to Mars instead of rockets, anything that would do that, and also disrupt, the flight monopoly with the airlines and everything like that, would be highly, highly, combustible in terms of a discovery. So we understand that that's all true, but it's a great thought experiment to work through that from a Christian vocational standpoint. When I posted that comment, I got a comment about when I said that 2024 was the year we tamed gravity. I got somebody commented saying, but what if the Antichrist offers it to you? And it reminded me of the mindset that is reactionary, which is anything good or bold must come from evil. Christians can't do anything like that. Christians can only get their soul ready for death through perfect holiness. And I totally reject that, because that's not what the Bible teaches, okay? It doesn't teach that at all. The Bible does not teach that the point of being a human being is to run away from boldness of action in serving your fellow human beings, to run away from grand schemes of technology, and that anything that smells like that is most likely from evil, like the Antichrist, whether that's a system or a person. So, on the one hand, I'm just summarizing this point. On the one hand, you have a more legitimate, nuanced critique, which is the practical reality of trying to bring in a disruptive technology that truly serves humanity and disrupts so much of the mafia run grid. That is a real reality that you're going to have to face. The number 2 point is kind of related to that, which is just simply that, anything wonderful, bold, and amazing and serving of humanity that has to do with advancement and invention or innovation will inherently have come through the establishment. And therefore, even to fantasize about desiring such things is kind of like showing that you're really ready to be tempted by the Antichrist. So those are two related things, but what's your take on those things?
Well, I mean, why only technology? The Antichrist is not doesn't have a monopoly over technology. The Antichrist has a monopoly of basically everything, right? So for example, I don't know who it is, but one very famous monastic said that the demons can never create; they can only ape.
Yeah.
So if we are fearful of some gray alien coming to us and offering us technologies or whatever, then the aliens are right. We don't deserve technologies. But on a much more serious note, uh, like I said, the Antichrist is not going to create anything and offer it to us free of cost. It's always going to demand something in return. So we have the knowledge of Christ in scriptures. We have uh, we have the knowledge of the church fathers or whatever, and we know that any technology that demands ritual sacrifice or scapegoating in return is not really any technology, especially in a world that is haunted by Christ. So the thing that you speak of, anti-gravity, elemental transmutation, and all of these things, these are things that seek to eliminate scapegoat and expulsion and ritual sacrifices. Because think about it, the current world order is able to do these things only because they are able to exchange their products for sacrifice.
Yeah.
So for example, the monopoly over the industries, the airline industries, and all of that, that is us laying our freedoms at the feet of the Antichrist. So the Antichrist is not going to hold you by your throat and demand anything. The Antichrist is going to give you, and it's going to be totally on you to uh, uh, your choice whether you're going to offer your freedom to it or not. So to say that you're fearful of the Antichrist is to betray a lack of trust in God and the lack of trust in God's knowledge, and like Peter, fearing to go out into the water and touch the hand of his master.
Yeah,
So
I can
if we
imagine that Peter would have had a lot of people calling him an antichrist when he told them what he did that night. Like, did you know what I just did? I walked on water
well
with
they were
Christ. They
they
say,
were
"You're a demon. You're a demon. You're a demon." Oh God.
Well, they were accusing Christ of sorcery and all sorts of things. Remember the trial that he faced before his crucifixion? He said that you prophesy some wild testimonies they were giving us, says you prophesy with the help of demons. And, he was not only there, but
Yeah, they
that
accused
one
him of
time
being with sorcery a lot.
sorcery.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and Jesus said a house divided it's against itself cannot stand. So that was him replying to these accusations. So if we are going to be fearful, if we are going to be afraid of human beings, then how much more are we going to be afraid of demons? So like we have no one to fear. Jesus said, "Do not be afraid." And at the end of the day, if the Antichrist does come and he does grabs you, nobody else is going to be, accountable for it except you yourself. You're the one who is
Yeah.
choosing to hand yourself over to the Antichrist.
But they
Then
associate that. But the point that I'm saying is that they associate, and I know you're saying it too, but they associate anything good to alleviate the tyranny that we're in with, oh, that's going to come from the bad guys. And I hate that. It's so stupid. It's such a defeatist mindset that is not Christian, but it's everywhere around Christians. That's what they all talk like. Every freaking one of them pretty much talks like that. The only one, nobody talks like what we're talking about in a Christian setting, in a Christian context. You know, the only people who talk hopeful are people who are like techno futurist optimists, and they're usually leftist or secular libertarian or something like that. There's nobody that talks about this really, truly uh, like this from a Christian grounded foundation. Yet the Christian worldview is the only thing that's going to save humanity, and Christian worldview enacted with breakthroughs is the only thing that's going to liberate humanity. And it's just it's discouraging, but it's also encouraging simultaneously for me, because it's just, I don't know what Bible people read, but they're not reading the book that I read that does not talk about anything good happening. You should be very skeptical of it, but they have that mindset to this day. Don't cure cancer. If you want to cure cancer, it's probably going to be the World Economic Forum giving it to you, and it's a scam. So don't take it; it'll get you. And you say, okay, well, how about we make housing more affordable for the poor? Oh, no, 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 don't do that, because anything like that would be a scam from the globalists. Say, okay, okay, okay. Well, how about we cure diabetes? No, 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 don't do that. It's a scam from the globalists or the right wing reactionary wicked people. Some of them do that angle too. But I'm like, I don't see that. Where's that in this? I don't see the Bible talking over and over and over again about don't have a boldness for serving your fellow human being, because it'll probably be a scam in the way you do it. Like, I don't see that warning, you
well,
know?
like let's look at the scripture and let's see how we can recognize the Antichrist. So in the book of Prophet Samuel, I think it's First Samuel, or I don't know exact chapter and verse. Remember that passage where the Israelites were demanding from the prophet Samuel that they want a monarchy
Yeah.
like every other nation.
Yeah.
So what was Samuel's warning to those people? He
Yeah.
said, "Beware, the ruler. He's going to take your earnings. He's going to take your crops. He's going to take your this. He's going to basically tell you what to do, what to say. Like he's going to he's going to ask for a lot of things in exchanges. So that should be our attitude towards people. If there is indeed any antichrist that's going to come and offer us a new technology, we can recognize him instantly if we heed the warning of Prophet Samuel. But if somebody, like you said, if somebody is offering these things like Jesus free of any exchange at all, because that's the nature of God, is not transactional. That's the thing about the Christian God that sets the Christian God apart from every other deity.
Now, are
Every
you
other
saying
deity.
free from? Are you saying even free from an economic exchange, like whoever made a car and then they sell the car as a car? That's an economic exchange. So that's lesser than Christ because it's not unconditional gift. It's you're paying for the time and labor involved in creating the product. Do you think that anybody who brings us anti-gravity should give it free unconditionally without any monetary compensation, or if they do, that's a sign that they're co-opted by evil? Or are you talking about the exchange being the violence and coercion side of that?
Well, this is like getting into the nitty-gritty of it, but the Bible does say that we should pay the labor, the wages, the Gospels also make that case when they're talking about taking care of the the apostles' needs being met by the congregations and all of that. But I'm talking about the kind of transactions that's basically out of monopolizing the markets. That's unjust weights and balances kind of thing, where you're exacting things from the people in order for them to just survive,
Yeah,
that kind of deal.
yeah,
So the Antichrist is all we're no stranger to the Antichrist. Just
right.
think about it. The saints in Mount Athos in 20th
Yeah,
century very aptly, very accurately described what the Antichrist is, and they didn't have to look any further than the governments and the pupils and the technocrats of their own day. They already told us, like, oh, okay, this, you're going to have to take this medicine. This is a brand new medicine, this is a new technological innovation, and when you take this, you're going to have the ability to transport yourselves as you already have the right to, or whatever. You have to you have access to food, but without it, you can't, you don't have any rights, or you don't have
yeah,
any reason to exist, right? So that's the sign of the Antichrist. The Antichrist is not going to give you some brand new innovation. It's Antichrist is going to give you a retarded version of what's already in existence, right? So the Wright brothers is a good example. The Wright brothers created the the airplane, you're right. And but the airline industry is not honoring the Wright brothers. Blaming the airline industry on the Wright brothers is like being low IQ. You're just exposing your low intelligence. You don't blame the airline
yeah,
industry on the Wright brothers. Like, you
yeah,
still honor the Wright brothers. So there's
yeah,
a chance your technologies are going to be used for bad things as well.
yeah,
But that's not on the inventors. The inventor still has the honor of emulating Christ.
yeah.
But like Nikola Tesla is also another example. He didn't
That's
get.
why that's why I say it has to be people who are Christ inspired, consciously or unconsciously, that do these inventions, because that's how you know they will be used for good purposes, is when you're imitating Christ in the way you use the tool. And if all the people who want to imitate Christ say we can't make good new tools to help us, then only bad people will be making tools to hurt us. You know what I mean? So it's like you have to figure out how to get the people who have the right mindset in terms of ethics, allegedly, to to uh to use those ethics to do good things with new tools that they bring to the world, right? And that's what we're talking about. All we're talking about are tools. Now, here's why tools are important: because tools are extensions of our humanity. Tools extend our senses, they extend our relationships into new dynamics. And if they're done in the name of Jesus, that means they should be saturated in the direction of Jesus, not with tolls and fees and fines and gimmicks and licenses and all these other things that muck it up. And I think that when you look at, for example, how Girard talks about the relationship between Christianity and mythology. Mythology is concealing its violence through the obfuscation of the crowd and the collective's violence against scapegoats. It says it's the gods saying it. And through the years, as Christianity has demythologized the world, it has brought forth the opportunity for scientific advancements to take place in a direction that serves human beings. This is not a perfect one-to-one relationship, but it is a direct through line that we can see through Christ coming into history and technology being more oriented towards serving our fellow human beings, no matter their wealth, no matter their ethnos, no matter their privilege, their status, their in-crowd status, whatever. That's the telos of technology inspired by Christ, right? So as that continues, tyranny starts to take a side. It starts to get pushed back, and then technologies come in and they make it harder for certain types of tyranny to continue. I mean, the old days, Viking marauders came to your village and killed you, and there's not much you could do about it. Then technologies start to give you a better chance at defending your village, and get a gun and shoot those marauders when they come by to burn your village apart. I mean, that's a form of technology dispelling mythology and elevating the ability for people to have a defense against more direct forms of brutality. And Christ is very much interested in that. His own mother spends her whole song talking about tyranny as to why he's coming. This is what I don't get, right? You know what I'm saying? Like, why, if this was about holiness, and it is about holiness, but holiness is what? Holiness is bringing things shalom, peace, together. Holiness is about no space between us, that we're one together. And so that's a political experience. That's a cultural experience. And so Jesus' own mother talks about politics about why he's coming, when he's in her womb. And I don't hear her saying, oh, I'm so excited that this man's coming because he's going to provide a sacred little space for everybody after him to hide and get their little spirit so perfect and clean and do jack nothing, because the Antichrist is going to bring healing to the masses. He's going to, I don't see Mary in her Magnificat saying, and the Antichrist will heal the nations, and the Antichrist will set poverty away, and the Antichrist will bring the lowly up to the top and take the top down to the low. And thank God for my son, because he's going to help a few people hide. What? That's not what her song's about. Clip that. Schwab?
Yeah, I mean, every creation is going to be like anything that is created ex nihilo is the imitation of Christ, is the imitation of God. So we have to keep in mind that we have to imitate God, right? We have to imitate the creative energy of God, and we have an active command to do this in the New Testament. We don't have we do not have any excuse for being lukewarm,
Yeah.
because we know what Jesus said to, if we see lukewarmness amongst you, like he's going to spew us out of his
Yeah.
mouth,
Yeah.
because you're neither hot nor cold.
Yeah.
So there's something about building nuclear reactors for you. so
Yeah.
so I don't know where I was going with that joke, but yeah, I mean, w- when we can't afford to be in a kind of lukewarm state of obedience, where you're like basically like a dumb child, looking to you for every step. At one stage or another, you have to take the initiative, right?
I mean,
Like
how
that's the
stupid? Yeah, how stupid is this? Think about this. This is the telos of so many traditional conservative Christians in all the different branches. Here it is. God made you. Then you make bad choices. So bad, so evil, so wrong. God's mad about that. So God figures out a way to save you from your naughtiness. And you need to do that X factor, whatever it is, whether it's join the special church, do the right style of baptism, have faith. Some different denominations have different takes on what that X is, what that big X thing you got to do, right? Some people say it's believe the right doctrine. Some people say it's take the right jurisdiction's communion. It is always some little X you got to do, and then God's happy, or at least the process of him being happy with you begins, right? But here's the point. What is the point of creating creation if that's all there was? So he creates this thing. He creates beauty. He creates wonder. He creates sunlight. He creates rainbows. He creates mountains. He creates birds. He creates rabbits. He creates amoebas. He creates all these things. He creates the crystals inside the rings of Saturn. But it was all about you being naughty, and then you got to behave yourself or trust in him, right? And if you believe in that, then that's the point of your life. You're the crown jewel of all of this creation. But the crown jewel's whole purpose is just, I was naughty, and now I have to be right, and that's it. Don't be mean. And that's all wonderful things. But my point is, that's not the point of the story, because once you are restored, you have work to do, because there was a point to you existing prior to you being a bad boy or bad girl. There was a point, there was a reason why you were here prior to that whole naughty dynamic. The naughty dynamic to righteous dynamic is a process that you go through on the road of your work as being a created creature, right? And this idea of like making that the whole point is a total lie. It's false. All right. What you do on earth to serve your fellow human beings is the point of why you were made. And your restoration with rightness with God is the means by which you are now enabled to do that work. I don't see people understanding that at all within Christendom or Christianity or whatever. I don't see that. I see people saying, you can't create anti-gravity. Bad guys are going to get you, or bad guys will be the ones that give it. You can't create cures for cancer. Bad guys will get you if you try, or bad guys will be the ones that offer it to you. You can't heal poverty. Bad guys will be the ones that will provide the solution for poverty. What in the hell? That's a lie from the bad guys to believe in all of this nonsense. That's why I say, what in the hell? Only hell could produce something like that. Hell on earth. This notion that only that which is good, only that which is only that which is evil can produce things that seem to be good. What? So that's see how that's Gnosticism? Do you see how that's pure Gnosticism? Really? Because it's like, there's nothing you can do about this world. You cannot cure cancers. You cannot cure diabetes. You can't make housing more affordable. You shouldn't even want to. That's all vanity. That's vanity, 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 vanity. And I think that's actually Neoplatonism infecting Christianity. It's wrong. So there's your Antichrist, Plato. Go back to him and knock on that door and find out where you went wrong, maybe. I don't know. It's not in the Bible.
Well, I mean, even if we grant the we can also find the injunction to create within traditionalism, right? So like one of the things that traditional Christianity shares within Protestantism or Orthodoxy or Catholicism is iconography, right? Iconography is associated with a lot of traditional churches, right? So where does the command to create icons come from? Is it in the Bible? The closest we can see any command to create objects of worship is in the Old Testament, right? In the temple.
Yeah.
While building the temple, God gives a blueprint of building the temple. He describes you're going to build the cherubim and all of that. But we see nothing like that in the age of New Testament, right? In the traditional churches of today. So that creation, that injunction to create materialistically is there within traditionalism. It's already there within traditions of the churches. What is that implying? That's implying that God has you have been once you have been an infant, and God had to tell you what is right and what is wrong, as the Old Testament, right? He had to give you the 10 Commandments, he had to give you blueprints and all of that. But in the New Testament, we have freedom. We have freedom to innovate. There is no overt descriptive commandments given by Jesus to do this and to do that, to do this and to do that. Jesus is leaving, and I think this is purposely leaving room for us to create, because he is, and he is telling us through parables, he is telling us through stories to go out into the water and to tame nature with Christ. And that
Yeah.
is our injunction. That is the open secret, so to speak, in the
And
Bible.
And James Cortini's recently said on my show that he made a good point that curing cancer is repentance. But if you think about it, repentance means to renew your mind, to go in a different direction. And when seed oils poison people's mitochondria because we tried to build a Tower of Babel, and so there's obviously forms of fake, not fake, but just foolish innovations. They'll put it that way. Seed oils are foolish innovation to use for human feeding. That was a wicked and foolish and stupid, hubristic, massive problem that has tortured millions and billions of people. Really, it is going to, unless people wake up faster. But like repenting of that. That's see, repentance isn't just, hey, God, I was mean to Surit today on the show. That's not the whole point of repentance. Repentance is also a collective hive kind of thing. Humanity must repent of its errors, right? That harm each other. Forgive them, for they don't know what they're doing, as they put chemotherapy for something that could be eliminated with much less toxicity and pain and suffering and anguish and, horror, right? And I'm tired of Christians believing that horror is a part of the experience that God intended for humanity. That's bull. That's nonsense. You know, suffering is part of our journey. It will be part of our journey to some degree. You cannot
But to
roll it back.
purposely
But
but to
horror,
purposely suffer,
yeah,
there's nothing holy about
yeah,
that's like self-flagellation. That's
right,
not suffering, right? So purposely suffering is not something I think God intended for us. Yes,
yeah,
like suffering, like there is a holy kind of what makes suffering holy is that when it produces a service, when it produces something that is of value, and two, it is always towards your neighbor. It's not selfish, it is always towards others, for the betterment of others.
yeah.
So when the Antichrist gives you a product, he will not be suffering. He will not be putting his life on the line. And two, he's not. It's going to be only for himself. Because he is going to strip you of your liberties when he's giving you the product. So that
Because
the
because sacrificial violence always slows down a species from thriving, because that's the point, right? Like Jesus doesn't end human sacrificial violence because it's just evil. He also ends it because it's not only evil, it holds humanity back from doing things in a thriving way, right? Because like Girard says, Rene Girard, when you believe that burning witches is effectual for curing a plague, then you'll do it. If you really truly believe that the plague came about because somebody was a witch and you burn that witch and they're on fire, the whole community truly believes that person's, suffering and death will purge the community of the bacterial infection. If they found out, if they wash their hands, that's a technology. If they get clean water, that's a technology. And if they wash their hands, then they don't need to burn a witch, right? And so that's all I'm saying when I say let's have energy too cheap to meter. That's like, hey, instead of burning the witches of the Iraqis, the Yemenis, right? The Iranians, the Syrians, the Libyans, look, you're burning witches to run your fuel. right? Because you believe in the mythology of we have free markets and this is what we produced energy and it has to come from Saudi Arabia or blah, blah, blah. And it has to be a certain price. That's all mythology, just more realistic, right? Or more modernistic in its language, but it's still a vestige of sacrificial mythology. Oh, this is the way it is. Barrels must be this way. They must be this price, and we must be with OPEC or this thing or that thing, and it all has to be this way. And that's why we have to sanction Iranians, and we have to do this, or else there will not have society. That's called mythic thinking. That's a continuation of the same thinking that says burn these people alive to stop the plague. So that mindset is very much alive in the world today. And it is up to Christians to expose it as evil and then to say, look, instead of doing this, instead of having this type of energy system, let's have a decentralized, unlimited energy system that doesn't require killing these people or that people to do it. Now, the conservative, more reactionary mind will always say, but the bad guys are going to use the technology too. Yeah, well, yeah, especially if the good guys don't do anything. Yeah, like they always do. Yeah, the bad guys will use good technologies for wicked purposes and make it super expensive and hard to get a hold of and all that. They'll do that. But that's why you need to do what I'm saying and do it yourself. And at the same time that you do those technologies and bring those things to fruition, remember that uh, when people try to use technologies in a bad purpose, it's just a more of incentivize. It's more incentive to go out and do it, use those technologies in a self-sacrificial way, which we can do all around today. If someone around your town is, you know, bilking the poor for energy, then you have a right to serve your fellow human beings to power their homes without them being impoverished. Uh, and if they need to have food that's quality as opposed to food that's nutritionally depleted and toxic, that's serving your neighbor. That was what you were supposed to do all along. You were supposed to do that. That's not a side thing that you should feel dirty for and feel like it's a nihilistic sideshow and the main event is just you becoming more privately holy. That's not the point of your life, according to the Bible.
But yeah, I mean, also we have to believe that the name of Jesus drives away these worldly temptations and all of that. We read, if we are to take, if we are to be serious Christians, we really have to literally believe this. I think one of the great examples of this is Saint Luke of Simmerfold. He was like from the USSR. He was a saint who was a surgeon. He created new surgical operations and all of that. And whenever he would operate on his patients, he would never operate without having an icon of the savior nearby. So that's one of the ways in how you can bring forward new technologies. You proclaim Christ at the very outset, right? And if you do that, then the Antichrist and basically all of the things that you described, they will not be able to grab hold of that technology, because that technology has already been sanctified,
Yeah.
right? It's not, it may appear mystical, what I am saying, but it's really not. Because the way you sanctify a technology is you make sure that that technology is not harming anybody. It's always affirming human life. It's always eliminating suffering, right? There is no way that technology can you know be used for the bad guys. Even if there is a chance that that technology can be used by the bad guys, well, then
Yeah.
create a technology that can't be used by the bad guys,
Yeah.
right? There are plenty of examples, like
Yeah.
for example the webcam, or whatever. You always use it to communicate, or maybe somebody is using the webcam badly, but you can always find examples of technology that is always
Yeah.
used
Jesus
for
used
good.
Jesus used a boat, and boats have been used to murder and rape and pillage people. So,
Well,
you
I
know,
mean, like maybe that is Jesus's command for us, even if such an example doesn't exist. Maybe that is Jesus's command, is that create something that cannot be used for harm and that will eliminate sacrificial thinking. And
and you know, it's not that you can completely purge people because of a breakthrough, but it certainly makes it harder for certain paradigms to continue in that way. Um, it's fact that, for example, we've alluded to this in the past that, and I still want to get Matthew B Crawford on. So if anybody knows his contact, his university gives an email that is not in use. So get him on the show. Because Matthew Crawford has a great book, a great article about the sexual revolution was a government psyop, and he wrote this in unheard.com, and he writes about it a lot on his Substack too. But like when you think about like how much destruction has been done, how many children are using drugs and fentanyl, how many children are, abused, how many, molested because of the government psyop that is therapeutic family dynamics, right? Where they intended after World War II to de-fascist, de-Nazify or whatever the working class, blue collar Christian values of men leading and women having different gender roles in the home. And they said that those views of having distinct gender role views was a precursor to becoming fascist like the Nazis that were just defeated. And so psychiatrists and psychologists were weaponized and deployed by the government intelligence agencies and put into universities and all over this country to actively try to subvert and break the family structure and accelerate this remolding of humanity into what we have today, which is an absolute mess, right? So that was using technologies of persuasion, manipulation, propaganda, lies, disguised as medicine, disguised as therapy, to do something that had a concerted plan, and it's been largely accomplished. But it's not fully accomplished because people wake up and they start wising up. But this idea that we should just roll over and allow these types of forces to just wash over us. No, we should have a view to see these things defeated. That just like there was a plan hatched to destroy the family, we can put a plan in place to heal the family and to make the family greater than it's ever been before, greater than any other time in human history. That's the Christian mindset. You will do greater things than me, Jesus said. Right? And we don't believe that. We don't believe it. We say, no, the family's broken. It can't ever get better. It's only going to get bad. And if it gets better, it's only because the Antichrist offered it. No. Stop that stupidity. It's not what Jesus talks about.
right, yeah, I completely
If
agree
the
with you.
family's
Like,
better, it's because the Antichrist did it for you. Okay.
it's
You
I'm
create a
afraid
son. If
with
you say, hey, I created a sonogram so we can show the baby in the womb so you don't abort it. No, only Antichrist will show an ultrasound of a baby. What? You know what I mean? Anything you
well,
do.
that's a good technology. That's a good
Yeah.
example of a technology
That's what
that
I'm
you
saying.
can't right. So yeah, here's one for you haters. Like, if you were, oh, he can't think of an example of a
Yeah.
good technology, there's a good
Yeah.
example of a
A
technology.
sea
you
turtle,
know
yeah, a sea turtle has fishing net wrapped around it. You use technology of clippers to clip it off of them and set the sea turtle free, but only Antichrist would do that. Only the Antichrist would set the sea turtle free. Christians would sit on the boat and say, my God, what a sinner I am. My God, have mercy. Please don't strike me down right now. Please don't strike me down for having the dignity to look at the beauty of the ocean. Please don't kill me for looking at a sea turtle's beauty. That's all the Christian's going to do. And their worldview, I'm saying. You know what I'm saying? That's their worldview. The Christian does not dare use a technology to clip the sea turtle's barnacles off his head and get the net off of his little wings, little beautiful little flippers. You know, that's not, it can't do that. Only an Antichrist would do that.
Well, I mean,
Looking at people's
throughout.
arms that are the size of ham hocks because of seed oils, right? But only the Antichrist would get them arms looking good again, like 24-inch, you know, muscular. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, why in the world do we seed anything good to evil? It's so dumb. It's so diabolical. You can see it a mile away, except for apparently nobody sees it. You don't
Well,
understand.
I mean, if we listen to rock music, for example, we don't say like, "Oh no, this is a song for the devil," you know. We don't, but there are plenty of Christians who use rock music to make godly music, you know, praise, worship music, you know, whatever. So the only people who are really against doing that is like the Westboro people, you know, the really out there kind of Christians
Yeah,
who say that you you can't you can't that's the devil's music, you can't use that, you know, whatever.
yeah.
But this is what people look like when they say that don't create, don't innovate, don't create good art, don't create good music, only be holed up in your like private
Just
cellar.
yeah. Imagine you have like a serial killer or like some psychopath, and he's locked everybody in the apartment complex. He's locked all their doors, and it's very freezing cold winter. You know, and it's like somebody's like, I have an idea. I can get up in the vents and I can get the air conditioner to work again. We can have heat. We can say, and they're like, don't you do that. Only an Antichrist person would do that. You know what I mean? Just let's just sit and freeze to death and pray.
Well, I
Okay.
mean,
Okay, we can
at
do
the end
that.
of the
Yeah, we
day,
can do that. We can do that. That's what we can do. Let the
but
little babies
remember,
freeze. Yeah.
the gospel itself is a creation by God.
Yeah.
And when God came down from heaven to earth in the form of his son, Jesus Christ, he did not, he knew what was going to happen. He knew that he was going to suffer, and he was going to put up on the cross and be nailed to the cross. He was going to suffer the most horrific torment that humanity
Mm-hmm.
has ever invented,
Mm-hmm.
but he still did it.
Mm-hmm.
That's God, being an inventor par excellence, right?
Yeah.
That's God being setting a precedent for all of us
Yeah.
by creating a technology, the gospel technology, which you call, and by creating that technology, he died and he suffered on the cross because we
Yeah.
still had that kind of mindset that don't
Yeah.
do this, Jesus, don't do this, otherwise we're gonna kill you. you
Yeah.
know
I like that. Isaac Morehouse was a podcaster that commented on my recent podcast, and somebody in there, I think it was him or somebody else, mentioned the cross was a wicked technology that God used in a good way. You know what I mean?
right.
He turned that into a symbol of love. I mean, my goodness, that's crazy. If that doesn't prove the point we're making, I don't know what else. That you can take the worst technology, which is designed to maximize human suffering, and flip it and make it a symbol of unconditional forgiveness and love and acceptance. I mean, my goodness, that if that doesn't prove the point I'm making, I don't know what else does. Uh, Another one that I want to emphasize while remember this point is that the suffering servant concept, right? That Christ comes as a suffering servant in the first coming into history. And I've pointed out how, we've made this false dichotomy to say, well, he was really nonviolent the first time, but when he comes back, he's going to be so violent and pagan, you have no idea, right? And it's like, well, that's dumb. That's not the point of Jesus at all. That's not the point that's told in it at all. But here's what we can say. The prophecies that are talking, like Mary's Magnificat, her song for the arrival of her son, and Zechariah's song, and all these other prophecies that they're pulling from, that are talking about him beating the nations and beating, he's going to beat the nations. This is how it works. That's how it works. You see, it's human beings through art, through the proper use of their minds, their activities, their relationships, and the use of tools to beat back the forces of the nations in their wicked, violent schemes. And that's why Mary is singing about how he's going to bring the mighty down. That's what the point is, and I'm tired of Christians saying, "Oh, I don't want the mighty to be brought down. Anybody who wants to do that is a tyrant or an antichrist." No. Like you said, the antichrist has their own framework, and it will always be some kind of violence, which in fact these Christians are keeping in power by always pushing down people trying to do nonviolent service by saying, "Oh, do that. That's going to be evil." Well, then all you're doing is keeping the status quo of antichrist violence in power, because the
Right.
antichrist power violence system is all about pretending to be concerned for victims, but using it for coercion and power and evil. And the Bible doesn't like that. And all those prophecies from his first arrival into history, and then when he wins and is defeating his opponents through history, what is misconstrued as some kind of pagan return from Christ coming out and beating people up with elbow kicks and punches and all this stuff is actually him through his church using their relationships, using their medicines, using their technologies, their tools, and their art to make the world inhospitable to tyranny and all of its wickedness. That's what we're supposed to be doing, and that's what's going to happen.
So the answer to the question, what if the Antichrist gives you anti-gravity, is to redeem that technology,
That's
just
right.
like Christ redeemed the technology of
That's
the
right.
cross,
Yeah,
right? Just
that's right.
as Christians all over the world right now redeeming the technology of the
Yeah,
internet
yeah,
in spreading the gospel. We
yeah,
don't flee away from the internet, right? Like even the monastics are using the
yeah.
internet these days. So, that's the answer basically to
Yeah.
that question.
And the only way we can do that is to have the right mindset that truly trusts that Jesus is saving the world and that it's not something that's been a defeated project. And so that's where we'll leave it off. I appreciate your time, sir. Thank you for joining me.
Yeah, my pleasure.
And if you want to email us at A Neighbor's Choice with your comments or questions about anything we've discussed today or a guest suggestion, you can do so at hello@aneighborschoice.com. I'm David Gornoski. Godspeed.